What if Ahsoka brought Anakin back to the light on Malachor? Vader calls out to her, calling her name. She looks back and sees that she cut off a portion of Vader's mask, revealing a face that all too much resembled Anakin, except for his yellow eye. He calls her name again, except it isn't Vader's voice anymore, it's Anakin's. Ahsoka whispers his name, whispers Anakin, hesitating, not sure what to do, but she quickly makes up her mind. She tells him that she wouldn't leave him, not this time. They stood there, staring at each other for a moment, and she could see the turmoil going on inside of him. However, his expression hardens, and he tells her that then she would die. Ezra calls to her and tries to come to her, not wanting to leave her behind, but she pushed him back, preventing him from getting inside again before the doors closed. The duel between her and Vader begins anew, with them now being sealed inside the crumbling temple. Ahsoka might have been able to defeat him, but after hearing Anakin's voice, she couldn't bring herself to even try to kill him. Taking a moment to look around the crumbling temple, she realized that if they stayed here any longer, then they would both die. She tried to talk to him again, to convince him to leave with her, but he was steadfast and just continued on attacking. Ahsoka fell silent again, falling back into the rhythm of combat. She realized that the only way either of them was going to leave was if one of them died. So, not having the heart to kill the person who used to be her mentor and friend, someone as close to family that a Jedi could get, as Vader pushed forward, lightsaber aimed toward her, instead of easily blocking it, she deignited her lightsaber. Vader's visible eye widened, but he either couldn't or didn't care to stop the thrust. His lightsaber went through her, and the pain made Ahsoka fall to her knees and drop her lone lightsabers. Vader went to his knees with her, keeping the lightsaber steady in her chest as he stared into her eyes, fear and confusion apparent even on the little face that was visible. Ahsoka used what strength she had and reached up and wrapped him in the best hug she could manage. She couldn't seem to form words, but she at least wanted to show some sort of affection to say goodbye. Vader, though, instantly deignited his own lightsaber, letting it fall to the floor, forgotten, as he pulled her close. Before he wanted nothing more than to kill her for refusing him. Now he could not only believe what he had done, but that she had allowed it. He frantically scoops her up in his arms and summons his TIE fighter. He carries her into the cockpit with him and uses its cannons to blow open the temple's door. He quickly flies out of the temple, barely making it before it imploded on itself. Once he safely reaches space, he prepares his head to Mustafar, but stops himself. He realized that if he goes there, not only would Ahsoka be affected by the dark side of the Force, but Palpatine would learn of her. He needed a place to take her that wouldn't turn her in, that wouldn't harm or negatively affect her. The only place that came to his panicked mind was Alderaan. Senator Alderaan was suspected to be a rebel as well, so he could also have been working with Ahsoka. Without sparing another thought, he plots his course to Alderaan. It took longer than he would like to get there, but as soon as he did, clearance was quickly given and he landed smoothly in the palace. He worried that Senator Organa wouldn't be there, but was relieved to see him and his wife, Queen Breha, walk out of the palace side by side. He hurriedly gets out of the TIE fighter, cradling Ahsoka, and walks towards them. Senator Organa's face visibly tightens when he sees Ahsoka in his arms, but he doesn't say anything as he approaches him. Once he's mere feet away, he asks them, no, begged them to save her, that he would do anything. Senator Organa was the first to move, looking over to his wife before telling Vader to follow him. He's left in a medical facility where medical droids and human staff are, and though he doesn't want to, he allows them to take her from him. As he watches her being taken away, Senator Organa says that he can leave now. He firmly tells him that he wasn't going anywhere, not without Ahsoka. Ahsoka had told him that she wouldn't leave him. He was not only going to make sure she kept her promise, but he vowed to not leave her as well, especially when she was this helpless because of him. They both waited till someone came back and told them that she would be fine. That wasn't too serious since the wound was cauterized. She just needed to heal in the back tank and rest and be allowed to wake up naturally. They guided him to the room she was put in and he stayed there, only leaving the room when they took her out of the back tank, changed her medical gown and placed her on a bed. As soon as they let her back in, he returned to her side. As days passed though, he grew more and more anxious and scared as she showed no signs of waking up, and he was just managing to keep himself together. However, in the late afternoon of the 6th day, she stirred and opened her eyes. He was overjoyed and relieved, wanting to rush to her side, but managed to hold back, not wanting to scare her or overcrowd her. Ahsoka was groggy, confused and disorientated, having a hard time processing the room around her. However, when Vader came into focus, his suit still damaged from the duel, fear began to seep through her. if they are both alive, then he must have taken her to force whatever information he wanted from her, and possibly tried to turn her to the dark side. She tried to sit up to even move, but her body wouldn't listen, only managing to shift around. Vader quickly approached then, gently calling her name, trying to soothe and reassure her. This made Ahsoka still. Though it was distorted, it was the voice of Anakin again, the same one that had convinced her to stay in the temple in the first place. Giving up and trying to fight right now at the side, she looked up to his face and gasped. His exposed eye wasn't yellow, it was completely blue. He reached out his gloved hands and grasped her closest hand as he fell to his knees beside the bed. He apologized for almost killing her, for giving in to the Sith, to Palpatine, for everything that he had done and for every action that caused her harm, for not being there when she needed him. Ahsoka is in shock, but she quietly whispers to him, calling his name again, Anakin, and that she also was at fault for not being there when she needed her. The medical staff were alerted by now that she is awake, and they quickly shooed Anakin away so that they could check and to make sure Ahsoka was doing okay. Only when they were done did they allow Anakin to come back in. Senator Organa came with him, confusing Ahsoka, but she greeted him anyway and asked where she was. He informed her that she was on Alderaan, it being where Vader brought her. Ahsoka immediately asked if this was alright, if they were putting them or the planet at risk. Bell simply shook his head, assuring her that all was well. They kept both their presence as a secret, and though it didn't appear to be tracked, they sent Vader's TIE fighters to the other side of the galaxy. They had likely flown to his sun by now, which was what they were aiming for. He tells them both that the disappearance of Vader has been kept secret, but there was already unease on Coruscant in the Imperial military. Bell then approaches Ahsoka, close enough that he can whisper without Anakin overhearing, and asks if she is truly alright, and asks what had happened to Vader to make him act so strange. Ahsoka gives a small smile, remembering that she hadn't told anyone, and whispers back, informing Bell that Vader was Anakin, that he had given to the dark side and joined the Sith, but was back to the light. He could tell by looking at his eye, as Sith eyes were yellow. Bell's surprise is visible on his face, but he sneaks to look at the damaged portion of Anakin's helmet before turning back to her. He strains and talks so Anakin can hear him, saying that they could talk more when she gets back on her feet again. However, before he can turn to leave, Ahsoka calls to him, asking if there is anything that he can do to help Anakin. Upon Bell's confused silence, Ahsoka goes on, stating that if Anakin was going to stay here, he needed to get out of that suit. It was too recognizable. Understanding dawned on Bell's face, and he nodded his head, ushering Anakin out of the room with him. Anakin only glanced back at her, his visible eye pleading, before disappearing from sight. Ahsoka sighs before getting comfortable, allowing herself to drift off to sleep again. Bell leads Anakin to another room where people come and remove as much of the suit as they could. He wants to protest, but understands why Ahsoka wants it gone, even if it was comfortable to him, and he fears that there is no better alternative. So he stays silent, allowing them to do their work. They quickly finish removing everything, all his cybernetic limbs and life support functions, and place him in a bacta tank. They occasionally take him out, both to do measurements and surgery to help heal his damaged flesh and organs. Ahsoka visits him frequently. She's shocked at first when she sees how bad his condition is, but resolves herself to do everything she can to help him. She also talks to Bell, filling him in on what had happened and what she knew. She also tells him that she wants to help rehabilitate Anakin. Bell hesitantly relents and she promises to repay him for everything he is doing for Anakin and for believing in him. Bell asks what she would do if she was wrong, if Anakin wasn't redeemed. Ahsoka still is, having no one to think about it, but she already knew. She tells him that then she would kill him, to prevent him from becoming a monster. Ahsoka thinks hard on what she can do to prevent Anakin from returning to the dark side and how she can help him recover. She will need lightsabers, as she learned that Anakin left the lightsabers on Malachor, having completely forgotten about them, only concerned about Ahsoka's survival. She will need to either retrieve them or get new ones so they could train and defend themselves. As days pass for planning and visiting Anakin, Ahsoka gets a chance encounter with Bell and Brielle's daughter, Leia. Seeing and talking with her made her suspicions grow, that she wasn't a child because she looked and acted like someone else she knew. But she kept it to herself. She would let them reveal their secret if they wanted, when the time was right. In the meantime, she enjoyed spending time with Leia, and it appeared that Leia grew attached to her as well. Coincidentally, this meant she spent time with Queen Brielle as well. They became close friends. It took nearly a month for Anakin to get his cybernetic limbs. In that time, he was buried at the back tank, and so his health had improved drastically. When they put them on him, though, he was eager to get moving, not having been unable to do anything and helpless for such a long time. Ahsoka had made sure to visit him at least once a day, and though he couldn't talk, she spoke her thoughts or just stayed silent, keeping him company. She continued to visit him after his new limbs were attached to help him get used to him. He didn't need a respirator or any other life support functions, The medic was to have plenty of time to correct the damage and then allow his lungs to heal. So, though his voice was raspy and hoarse, he eagerly began talking with her. As he walked and moved his arms, they reminisced about shared memories and adventures that they had had. They both tweaked his prosthetic limbs to make them more fluid and comfortable, Ahsoka finding it hilarious when she intentionally sabotaged them, making do the opposite of what he tried to do before actually fixing them. Soon he was up and going without any help and was functioning looking like a normal person. As soon as this happened, Ahsoka thanked Bell and Bray for everything and told them to contact her if they ever needed something. She had already told them they would be leaving as soon as possible so as to avoid any harm that could come to Alderaan. She had also asked them not to tell anyone that they were alive so as to keep them all safe. The Gons gave them the shuttle and they were surprised by the day to find R2-D2 waiting on board, who was also excited at seeing them. They thanked the Gons before they took off and flew into the Outer Rim. Ahsoka thought of a way to help Anakin, both physically but also in the Force, making sure that he didn't return to the dark side. But before that, she stopped by a couple words to get supplies with credits Bell had given her. Once they were set, she guided them to a planet that she had come across in her travels that was strong in the Force. She landed the shuttle in Alderaan, and they set up a camp in the Corpse of Trees. They both rested for a few days, even though it was hard to sleep since the two suns made it constantly day. But Ahsoka got a reason to bring them here. She both wanted to rehabilitate Anakin physically and make sure that he was well tuned in the light side of the Force, to balance him like she herself found balance in the Force. Becoming something between a Sith and a Jedi, someone who uses the Force and one's emotions to benefit them, but to not let their emotions control them, a way to combine the best sides of both the Jedi and the Sith. Oroterra was perfect for this, both since its gravity was lower, making it easier to move, and that it had a powerful Force version that was neutral in the Force. After a few days of meditating together, basking in the Force, Ahsoka takes him to a clearing and gives him a stick that she had fashioned to resemble a lightsaber. He was confused, but Ahsoka reminded him that he had left the lightsabers on Malachor, and he was in no condition to go get them or get new ones for the time being. He sheepishly admits that he hadn't been thinking back then, before he assumes a stance in a Form 5 and tells her to get ready. Ahsoka simply shakes her head, instead of telling him that he would practice by himself. She wanted him to go through all the forms of lightsaber combat, to both refamiliarize himself with them but also make sure that his limbs could keep up. Anakin grunts something under his breath but complies. While he does that, Ahsoka gets 2 more sticks to make herself something to practice with as well. When she is finished, she joins him in going through all 6 forms they knew. Over the next several days, they trade off between meditating, physical activity, and practicing lightsaber forms, as well as resting when needed. Soon though, Anakin grows restless and challenges Ahsoka to a duel, which she accepts. They both quickly learn that fighting with sticks was way different from fighting with lightsabers. But because Ahsoka had trained the staff as well and knew how to handle the shock in her arms and hands, she easily won the first bout. Though Anakin's arms were metal, he felt the impact on the nubs of the limbs, and he still wasn't used to it or the limbs in general. They dueled a few more times after that, though Anakin only managed to win one before Ahsoka stopped them to rest. From then on, they had a few duels a day and they quickly honed their rusty skills. Anakin got comfortable with his new limbs and was glad they had been replaced. He thought that the ones given to him by Palpatine were the best that could be offered, but that was honestly wrong. Not only did he not have to wear a suit, but he could also move around and look like he used to. He realized that Palpatine was likely purposely weakening him so they couldn't overthrow him, something similar to how General Grievous' weakness were his damaged organs, which could have been replaced or at least healed. Anakin was thankful that they weren't, because he could only fear how strong that would have made General Grievous. With his time spent with Ahsoka on the planet, he now felt at peace and was starting to feel happy again, though there was still a great deal that he regretted, things that haunt his nightmares, namely the death of Padme and the destruction of the Jedi. Ahsoka urged him to tell her everything, to hopefully make it easier by talking about it, and he hesitantly did so. Ahsoka was shocked and horrified at things he had done, like hurt Padme and kill the younglings, but she listened, trying not to judge. During the times when he paused, she told him about her life in hiding, how she first lived in a farming community before it was occupied, how she trained some villagers to fight back, then her doubts and fears leading her to run away to save a young Force-sensitive girl, a request to get another pair of lightsabers that led her back to the moon, to the crystals in the blade of the Inquisitor that had come to the moon upon learning of her presence, how she killed the Inquisitor by exploding his lightsaber, then freed the people of the moon, leaving them Belagor in his care, while she joined the Resistance in charge of the intelligence. How that had led her working with the crew of the Ghost and eventually Malachor. They eventually told each other everything that had happened while they were apart. Then Anakin asked something that he had been wondering about for a while. As they were sitting by a fire they had built to keep warm on a rare day when the suns were eclipsing, he asked why she hadn't blocked a strike on Malachor, why she had just given up and was going to let him kill her. Ahsoka stayed silent for a moment before responding, telling him that she didn't want to kill him or let him die, not after hearing him call her name. However, as the temple was collapsing and he was no longer listening to her, she figured that the only way for him to survive would be if he quickly killed her and escaped the temple. It was Anakin starting to silently contemplate her words. After a short while, he tells her that he had warned her for refusing him, but never truly warned her dead. He just warned her by his side. Ahsoka smiled softly and chuckled, saying that it worked out in the end, so they shouldn't dwell on it too much. The past was the past. As long as they forgive and try to right their wrongs, then they should just move on and not let it control their lives. After that night, they decided together that they would help defeat Palpatine and overthrow the empire he had created. The next day, they packed up and left for the Tranquil planet in search of the rebellion. They quickly found Phoenix Hill, as they hadn't moved from Alderaan, where Ahsoka had met up with Kanan and Ezra before going to Malachor. She unites with Kanan, Ezra, Hera, Rex, who are relieved to see her alive. Rex was also confused, albeit relieved to see Anakin. They agree on the way that they would keep the fact that he used to be Vader a secret, so they just said that he had been hiding and had found her. Ezra is a Stagse's idol whom he had been learning lightsaber forms via holo recording from and begged Anakin to show him in person. They got him calmed down though, telling him that he would likely soon see. But first he had more important things to do. On the way, Anakin compiled everything he knew on a disc and he gave that to them, saying that they had stolen it from an Imperial officer. They didn't question him and eagerly dove into a treasure trove of information. Ahsoka and Anakin left them to work, promising to be back soon. Now they needed to get lightsabers. They meditated together, reaching out with the Force, feeling for anything that was calling to them. Ahsoka quickly found the distinctive familiar color of previous kyber crystals she had purified, which were on Malachor in her old lightsabers. Anakin, however, felt that his were somewhere else, a new kyber crystal that was calling to him. They left the next morning, starting first by Malachor, which was still abandoned. Though they had to dig through the rubble, it was still relatively easy to retrieve Ahsoka's lightsabers, making it seem they were waiting for her. They then left Malachor, and Anakin took over the controls, guiding the ship to the crystal that was calling to him. To Ahsoka's surprise, they arrive at Alderaan again. However, Anakin guides the ship to a different location, one nearest to the Force Virgins and the structure that housed it, than they had been before. He lands the ship in an unremarkable clearing within a day's walk of the Force Virgins. As soon as the ship is landed and powered off, he quickly walks down the ramp with Ahsoka following, having fixed the damage to her lightsabers on the way and ready to fight if needed. However, not that far away from the ship, Anakin kneels down and brushes through a clump of grass. When Australians he is holding a lightsaber of a design that Ahsoka had never seen before. It was damaged and heavily rusted, but they weren't here for the shell. Anakin was here for the kyber crystal housed inside, though he would need the parts to build a lightsaber. Ahsoka was surprised that it was this easy, but she figured she had a similar case, albeit she had to fight. Anakin brushes it off, but Ahsoka stops him before he ignites it, already having seen one person die by a lightsaber exploding. She tells him to extract the kyber crystal from the inside, and if necessary, purify it. He complies and she leaves him meditating while she looks around. She comes to the conclusion that this had once been a battleground as she comes across more lightsabers, all of which she collects hopefully scrounged parts from for Anakin's lightsaber. When she returns, the discarded remains of the lightsaber sit in front of Anakin while he holds a soft and glowing crystal. Ahsoka dumps all the lightsabers she had collected on top of the discarded lightsaber, and he scoffs, jokingly asks if she wants him to extract all the kyber crystals. Ahsoka gently punches his shoulder and tells him to now build his lightsaber, unless he wants to find another way. Anakin just shakes his head, smiling, before he gets to work sorting and dismantling the lightsabers. Ahsoka helps with only removing the kyber crystals from the lightsabers and discarding the damaged and unusable parts. She can't dismiss the feeling of the kyber crystals, their signature in the Force. Even though they aren't calling to her, she feels a connection to them, so she pockets them. Though she does purify the few that have been bled, making them all pure again. And she catches Anakin watching her when she does it. She quickly finishes and is so caught up with the presence of the crystals in the Force that she doesn't realize that Anakin had finished his lightsaber. She looks up as he ignites it though. It gave off a light blue glow in the darkness. Ahsoka chuckled as she saw that he had left a cross scarred emitter Zen, making it truly old-fashioned. She commented that it suited him in his overdramatic flair. All he did was grin down at her before he swung it around, gaining the feeling of it. They quickly set up camp afterwards, deciding to sleep on the planet since they were there. Stayed there for a couple of days, not only exploring the area, curious as it apparently been forgotten and basking in the Force with their proximity to the Force Virgins, but they also started dueling with their lightsabers. They had grown used to the object that they were swinging to have weight, so both of them were caught off guard as they dueled with the weightlessness of a lightsaber, and they often put more force into it than they should have. Once they had familiarized themselves with the lightsabers again, though, they packed up their makeshift camp and charted a course back to the Resistance in Phoenix Cell. Now it was time for them to begin their fight against Palpatine and the Empire he had created, and they are more than ready and motivated to fight him till its conclusion. When they get back to the Phoenix Cell, they find out they are already acting on the information Anakin had given them. Ahsoka decided to take a more active role in the rebellion, joining Anakin as a pilot. Even though they needed someone to manage intelligence, Ahsoka had already set up a network so almost anyone could take her place. However, since the Resistance lacked skilled pilots, and both she and Anakin were not only terrific pilots, but had years of experience, she felt this was where she was needed more at this time. However, instead of leading squadrons, they instead flew solo, only having each other. This was Ahsoka's idea, as she remembered how during the war, not even clone pilots could keep up with them. Average people wouldn't stand a chance, and they would either be killed following them, or she and Anakin would have to hold back for them. They made runs against several Imperial fleets and targets, but the primary goal was locating the result of Project Stardust, the Death Star as it was called. Anakin didn't know much about it, just of its existence and purpose, but they both knew that destroying it was of the highest priority. However, they didn't have much luck finding it, though they were still devastatingly effective wherever they went. Imperial forces soon began to make the two X-Wings that kept suddenly attacking them, destroying Star Destroyers and other ships, as well as ground installations, then quickly disappearing their top priority whenever sighted. And when they saw them, they held nothing back, sending everything they had, though they were still no match for them. Ahsoka and Anakin spent long swaths of time alone together, either hiding in the middle of nowhere in space, or seeking shelter on uninhabited, or at least sparsely inhabited worlds. They became exceptionally close because of this, even closer than they were when they were master and apprentice. They made sure to frequently meditate and duel with each other. They stayed close to Phoenix Cell, though they weren't really a part of it, intending to join any rebel cell. Instead, they roamed between all of them, with Ahsoka knowing every one of them because of her previous role. They offered advice to help whichever one they happened to be by, doing whatever was needed to maintain the strength and effectiveness of the unit. They made sure to give the information Anakin had compiled to every cell as well, at least ones in which Ahsoka knew were trustworthy and didn't have spies. Visiting every rebel cell benefited them, as they could easily stop by any of the cells to rearm or refuel when needed, and they are already familiar with them and trusted them. However, soon they felt the need to split up, that they were needed in separate places. Ahsoka felt herself being pulled to Mandalore again to help in the Mandalorian Civil War, which had recently started. Even though they didn't want help from outsiders and had refused all but Sabine, Ahsoka feels that she needs to help them and they wouldn't refuse her, seeing as she helped them before. She was right as they welcomed her with open arms. Some even saw her as a rightful Mandalore, as she had won the Darksaber from Maul back in the Siege of Mandalore. With Ahsoka's arrival on the planet, Bo-Katan and her people quickly seek her out and join their cause, and Ahsoka and Bo-Katan strategize with each other on how to fight effectively, having done something similar in the Siege of Mandalore. The united Mandalorian clans fighting for them quickly vote to put Ahsoka in command, a neutral leader of the clans that has vast combat experience, including some against Mandalorians, and had proven not to have any ill intentions towards them. Bo-Katan steps up to continue to advise her in terms of her people and their fighting styles and capabilities. The battle quickly turned in their favor as Clan Saxon quickly lost allies, and by the end most stood alone besides for a few reinforcements from the Empire, with most all Mandalorians following the Darksaber. With everyone that had a claim to the Darksaber being on the same side, there was no question of competing powers, and Clan Saxon was deemed illegitimate. Anakin briefly joins Phoenix Cell and is soon called upon to help escort Mon Mothma to safety. It is our first encounter with a TIE Defender, something they knew of thanks to Anakin. Though it proved lethal and got a few of the pilots, Anakin managed to destroy it before too much damage was sustained. He is also present with Mon Mothma as the rebellion is reorganized into the Alliance to destroy the Republic above Dantooine. Briefly after that, Grand Admiral Thrawn appears over Alderaan, and a fierce battle ensues. Anakin manages to distract the Imperials, allowing most of the rebels there to safely jump to hyperspace. Once that is done, under the flag of truce, he speaks to Thrawn and shakes his resolve and duty to the Emperor and Empire by telling him the truth of Palpatine, what had happened to the Jedi, and that the Imperial military was a paper tiger. Thrawn allows him to leave peacefully, and the battle ends in an Imperial victory, though the rebels suffered few losses. Later, when Thrawn learns about the Gris hegemony threatening his people and not believing in the Empire anymore, he quickly returns with them to help. He leaves some of his people to garner support for him, keep up to date with the galactic affairs, and act as spies when he returns. Even though the Mandalorian Civil War was still raging, though they were by this point fighting more Imperials than Mandalorians. Ahsoka and Anakin temporarily unite to go and search Maul and kill him before he causes any more damage. To Anakin's dismay, his trail leads him to Tatooine, where they happen upon him and a man in a duel. They are shocked at recognizing Obi-Wan and the fact that he is heavily aged and worn. They hope Obi-Wan to defeat and kill Maul, but as soon as that happens, Obi-Wan turns his blade on them, not trusting his eyes as he sees Anakin and Ahsoka. One he thought dead and the other last being seen as Sith, wearing a terrifying black suit. Ahsoka manages to talk to him though, calming him down and briefly explaining everything that had happened. Obi-Wan leads him to a small home so that they can talk more, and Ahsoka and Anakin fill him in on everything. Obi-Wan is still hesitant on believing this, but he is already near tears at having people he considered family back alive and safe. They stay with him for a couple days, catching up and meditating together, but Anakin is eager to leave the Forsaken Planet, so he and Ahsoka prepare to leave. Before they depart though, Obi-Wan tells him everything. As they had been meditating, Qui-Gon Jinn had told him that it was okay to tell Anakin that he should trust him again because they had grown stronger because they had resisted the dark side. Obi-Wan also felt the change in Anakin, both through the Force and by his actions, so he did feel that he could trust him again. Obi-Wan tells them that Yoda is on Dagobah if they need guidance, and that Padme has successfully given birth before she had died to a pair of twins. The boy Luke was on Tatooine with Anakin's relatives. It was why Obi-Wan was there, to guard him. Obi-Wan then starts telling him of the second twin, but Ahsoka finishes it for him, saying that it was Leia Organa, in the care of Bell and Breon Alderaan. Obi-Wan is shocked that she knew and asked if Bell had told her, but she shook her head and told him that she had connected the dots herself. Finding that it knew Anakin, it was easy to see the similarities. Anakin is too stunned to react or fully process the revelation, but he manages to thank Obi-Wan for being with Padme at the end and protecting his son. They quickly leave to rejoin the fight against the Empire, and Ahsoka quickly parts ways with Anakin, wanting to give him space to process the revelation. Ahsoka immediately rejoins the fight in the Mandalore and Civil War, eager to bring it to its conclusion that was so near. Anakin just makes it back to Phoenix Cell in Yavin 4 though when someone reaches out to him. They are sound loyal to Grand Admiral Thrawn and are following his orders to relay critical information to him as a friend. He told Anakin that the Empire had assembled forces for a surprise attack against Mandalore, to purge them before they could become a bigger threat, a final strike to end the conflict that would soon commence. Anakin quickly thanks him before sending word out to the rebellion of the impending attack and requesting aid to help defend Mandalore. He didn't wait to see if anyone would come though. Instead, he jumped into his X-Wing and rushed to Mandalore, fearing for Ahsoka. He managed to reach Mandalore before they attack and warn them, allowing them to start evacuating and taking shelter. News of the impending attack quickly spreads on the planet, and the few Mandalorians so loyal to Clan Saxon give up, and the remaining Imperials are swiftly dealt with. However, all too soon, as night starts to fall, an Imperial fleet appears in orbit, a scene that is reminiscent of the attack of the Jedi Temple. Anakin and Ahsoka are in orbit as well as every Mandalorian Fang fighter. They desperately engage the Imperials, trying to delay them so that the evacuation could continue. They managed to catch them off guard, scoring several early victories, but they were too outnumbered, and though they weren't losing many pilots, they couldn't compete with the swarms of fighters and bombers that kept them coming, and more were slipping through the protective fire net Anakin and Ahsoka had tried to cast over Mandalore. However, as Anakin was about to send all Fang fighters into the atmosphere to focus on protecting the Mandalorian cities, several Mon Calamari ships, frigates, and corvettes, as well as dozens of rebel fighters and bombers appeared from hyperspace behind the Imperial fleet. They quickly engaged the unprotected Imperial capital ships, who were unprepared for even the slightest resistance, and the Imperial fleet quickly starts to get dismantled. The TIE fighters and bombers stopped their relentless assault on Mandalore and turned back to assist their fleet. Ahsoka, Anakin, and the Fang fighters returned to orbit to catch every fighter and bomber that had slipped through to seek retribution for whatever damage they did, leaving the space battles to the rebels who are now under the command of Admiral Raddus. The victory was devastating and swift, the Imperials being too confident and arrogant to be much of a challenge, and the rebel fleet came out with few losses. Most of the rebel fleet disappears once the battle is over, though few remain to help the Mandalorians. Because of this attack and the rebels' help, the Mandalorians, who had further united under Bo-Katan cries, vowed to help and support the rebellion in their fight against the Empire. Anakin and Ahsoka didn't get a moment to rest though, as soon as Ahsoka confirmed that Mandalorians are in good hands, they went back to help Ezra liberate his homeworld of Lothal. It was fairly easy, as Empire was still reeling from the disappearance of Grand Admiral Thrawn and their defeat over Mandalore. Because of this, as the Imperials started suffering defeats, the inexperienced Admiral quickly disengaged the fleet in orbit over Lothal and ran from the planet, abandoning the Imperial garrison to their fates. Only after that did Ahsoka and Anakin finally hear of the thing they had been searching for, the Death Star, and they learned that it recently destroyed Jedha. They quickly went to Yavin 4 and learned that it might have a critical weakness, but in order to know for sure, they needed the plans for it on Scarif. With the recent victories over Mandalore and Lothal, the rebel leaders had hope and morale was high, especially with Ahsoka and Anakin there, and they promptly made plans. First, people would infiltrate Scarif and retrieve the plans. Then, once they reached orbit again, a rebel fleet would come out and help them escape, or if necessary, destroy the shield gate first so they could escape. It was decided that Anakin would send a starfighter to help in the space while Ahsoka infiltrated the ground team with a stolen Imperial shuttle, Anakin being a better pilot and Ahsoka being better at stealth. A small group of Mandalorians joined the infiltration team as well as a few other rebels. The infiltration team successfully makes it onto Scarif with the help of the Imperial pilot that had defected, and Ahsoka lets Cassian, Jyn, and K2SO infiltrate as she stays with the other rebels. Something they failed to factor in was that because Ahsoka was a Togruta, she couldn't blend in, but she did promise them that if they needed her, then she would get to them. Ahsoka and the Mandalorians and rebels set up traps and killing fields as planned, then stayed hidden until Cassian reached out to them to create their distraction. With the Imperials alerted of their presence and deploying the garrison, the rebels began battling the Imperial garrison and were surprisingly winning. Though Ahsoka and the Mandalorians had to get creative on how to destroy the AT-ATs. While Ahsoka attracted one, drawing his attention with her being a Jedi brandishing lightsabers, the Mandalorians used their jetpacks to get on top of it and board it, commandeering it. They then turned the lasers on the other walkers, who were caught off guard by the sudden and friendly fire and were quickly destroyed before they could cope with the situation. With the battle outside in their favor, Ahsoka then went unknown to retrieve the group that had infiltrated as they had called for and informed her that they had run into trouble. She forges a path to them, having to cut through a vault door before reaching them, and protects them as they flee the building with the plans. All surviving members of the infiltration team board the stolen Imperial shuttle and they quickly take off. Though their unauthorized takeoff was noticed as all shuttles had been grounded, the ground command didn't have enough warning to notify for the shield gate to be closed before they escaped through it, though the Imperial fleet did get the warning and turned their guns on them. With a short message from the rebels in the shuttle, the rebel fleet appeared and engaged the Imperials. The distraction proved sufficient, the shuttle was able to jump to hyperspace with Anakin's X-Wing screening it. Once they were gone, the rebel fleet quickly disengaged and began to jump to hyperspace as well. The Death Star, which they feared so much from risking everything to destroy, appeared in orbit as the last rebel ship jumped out of the system. Back on Yavin 4, after combing through the plans, they managed to find the weak spot, a thermal exhaust port in a trench. But the good news is ruined as word from Ahsoka's intelligence network reaches them. The Death Star was on the move and headed toward Alderaan. The Empire knew that Malachor was associated with the rebellion, but they hadn't been able to touch him as he was part of the Senate and royal family of Alderaan. Now though, Palpatine had just recently dissolved the Imperial Senate and they could wipe out a planet if they needed to get rid of protesting planes from it. The rebel leaders suspected that the Empire would use Alderaan to pressure the rebels to give up the Death Star plans, but they feared that they would likely destroy Alderaan anyway to make an example out of them. As soon as Anakin learns of this, he sets off with volunteers to go intercept it. He would not allow harm to come to his daughter, or home, or the family that loved, cared, and raised her. Ahsoka flies by his side once again for this. They knew that they had to stop it before it reached Alderaan, otherwise whether they destroyed it or it fired, Alderaan would be destroyed. Ahsoka knew that they wouldn't stop at populated worlds along the way, wanting to avoid the public eye, so she managed to find potential staging points for it. She narrowed it down further by the hyperspace lane it was likely to be using, and the coordinates from Imperial databases that were uncharted regions. Ahsoka picked the most likely place to send the coordinates to the other pilots. She was miraculously right as they exited hyperspace. They see it sitting over an unnamed moon, a few systems away from Alderaan. Anakin quickly organizes the pilots into attack formation to begin the assault. No TIE fighters are deployed at first, not until they enter the trench. The TIE fighters and the fire from the desert itself started devastating the rebel numbers though. So Anakin ordered everyone to break off and get a safe distance away. They complied, but Ahsoka stayed, even though Anakin insisted that she go as well, because he felt this was his responsibility. But she refused, saying that she had vowed not to leave him. Not again. Anakin relented and they continued alone along the trench, evading fire and blasting anything that got on their way. They miraculously make it to the exhaust port intact, and, flying side by side, they launched the proton torpedoes into the chute. They both went in and Anakin and Ahsoka quickly pulled up and out of the trench, pushing their engines to the max to put as much distance between them and the Death Star as possible. However, they're still caught in the blast wave when it explodes, and their X-Wings are tossed about and bombarded with debris. The fires are quickly severely damaged, and the engines are devastated, and they lost all power and functions as they hurled through space. All they could do was hang on and rely on the Force. They lost sight of each other almost instantly, but they clung to each other's presence in the Force, both fearing for the other. As settled down and time passed, the other's presence kept them from getting lonely and from letting their emotions overwhelm them. They didn't know how long they stayed there, meditating in their cockpits, but Flaken's corvettes appeared in the system and began making their way to them using their transponders. They got to Anakin's first, then to Ahsoka's. When they pulled Ahsoka's X-Wing into the bay, Anakin rushed to and helped pull her from the damaged fighter and wrapped her in a fierce hug. They stayed by each other until they arrived back in Yavin 4 to a hero's welcome, as the rebellion celebrated this major victory. However, soon after, for the first time in a while, Emperor Palpatine made a public appearance and rallied the Empire. He used the destruction of the Death Star to unite the Empire against the Alliance to restore the Republic, and though its effect was mixed in the Outer Rim, the closer to the core regions it got, the more radicalized the address made the people. Anakin and Ahsoka both knew that they needed to remove Palpatine in order for a true victory to be achieved. Though Palpatine had rallied the Empire, they were still in shock and the Imperial Navy was disheartened and on the back foot. Because of this, the Alliance to restore the Republic were able to score many victories in middle fighting. With a new goal in mind to kill Palpatine, Anakin and Ahsoka took a step back from the active fighting and decided to go and seek advice from Yoda on Dagobah. They only did this with the assurance from the rebellion that they would be fine without them and would call if they needed them. They took the shuttle the Organas had given them and traveled to the swamp planet in search of the former Grand Master. As soon as they arrived over the planet, they let the Force guide them and they found themselves drawn to a certain area that was strong in the Force. After finding a firm enough ground to land the shuttle, they disembarked and trucked through the swamp. After a little while, they came across a small shack and they both knew without a doubt who was inside, his presence in the Force all too strong and familiar. Before they could approach it, though, the door opens and out walks former Grand Master Yoda. He stops just outside the door and begs for them to come to him. As they go to him, they notice that he has obviously grown older and that his body is starting to deteriorate. Ahsoka greets him first, and he nods, saying that it was good to see that she had survived and was alright. Anakin, still unsure and feeling remorse for his part in the destruction of the Jedi, took a moment longer before greeting him. Yoda smiles up at him, telling him that they had all made mistakes and had regrets. He was already forgiven. He was thankful that he had proven him wrong by coming back to the light, as now he could finally bring balance to the Force as Qui-Gon had envisioned. He continues, saying that he knew that they were here for his guidance, but he was afraid that he had little to offer. He had nothing more he could teach them, and no insight on the situation, as it was something the Jedi had never experienced. He could, however, direct them to a cave of the Force Nexus that was on the planet. However, it was a place that was powerful in the dark side. It would allow them to face their fears and possibly give them a vision of the future. Anakin and Ahsoka hesitantly agreed, not wanting the trip to be a waste, and after a night's rest, Yoda leads them to the cave that was masking his light side Force signature. He tells them to enter one at a time and he urges them to leave the lightsabers behind, that they would be useless inside a Force vision or could even interfere with it. Anakin volunteers to go first, and he hands Ahsoka his lightsaber. She's apprehensive about it as the dark side was strong and Anakin had only recently come back from it. Anakin reassures her with a carefree smile, and she just prays that his confidence is well founded. Anakin doesn't waste another moment and enters the cave, his cockiness fighting back his anxiety. It appeared to be a normal cave at first, though the deeper he went in, the darker it got. He kept on walking as if it was in a trance, but he was startled out of it as he noticed he was surrounded by red fog that appeared to have things moving through it. He instinctively reached for the lightsaber, and grew panicked when he remembered that he had left it with Ahsoka, though the thought of her made him come back to his senses and ground himself. He reached out with the Force into the fog but felt nothing, so he instead made his way to where one of the figures had stopped. As soon as he reached it, the fog vanished, revealing a figure that made him freeze. It took a moment for him to come back to reality, as the figure before him was Vader, or at least wearing his suit. It was like all those times they had seen his reflection in mirrors and glass. He came to the conclusion that this was a vision of the past, of when he had fought former Jedi, maybe in his fight with Ahsoka. He raised his fists, ready to fight, but his lightsaber suddenly appeared in his hand. Though confused, he was grateful and ignited it. Vader did the same and their duel started. Anakin didn't know how long the fight lasted, but it was a tough one. However, he eventually cut Vader down, and, raising his lightsaber, He quickly cut off a portion of Vader's mask like Ahsoka had done with him. However, the face underneath wasn't his and he stumbled back. The face was that of a woman, one that he had seen on Alderaan while he was recovering, a face that resembled Padme. He somehow knew without doubt that she was his daughter, that he had just killed his daughter. He didn't get another moment as another figure approached him, and he only just got his lightsaber up in time to block theirs. It was another person wearing Vader's suit. He defeated this one faster than Leia, but instead of delivering the killing blow, he instead knocked him down and cut off a portion of the mask. This face he had never seen before, though it resembled him when he was younger, and again he somehow knew without doubt that it was his son, Luke. Anakin jerked his head up as cackling echoed across the room, and he saw, up on a raised dais, Darth Sidious looking down at him wearing a wicked smile. Then the all too familiar pain of lightning hitting his body as Sidious shot lightning at him. His vision soon faded, but Padme's face appeared soon afterwards, asking why he had killed their children, why he had done Sidious's bidding, why he had given up at the time he could have changed everything. Her face suddenly contorted in pain as red lightsaber went through her from behind. Anakin tried to go to her, but found that he couldn't move and could only watch helplessly as she fell to the ground, dead. Behind her stood Vader, and this time he knew it was him, as the helmet had the same slash Ahsoka had inflicted. He only realized he was moving after he had already ignited his lightsaber and was charging his past self. No, his dark self. Vader easily blocked him and their duel got heated, though after a while, neither could get the advantage over the other. Anakin's anger and fear kept on rising as questions swirled in his mind. Why was he responsible for his children's death? Was he responsible for Padme's as well? Why couldn't he overcome his dark self? Would he really become Vader again? As he relentlessly attacked Vader, he used his anger expecting to help him like it always had, but instead it only seemed to fuel Vader. Would he come out of this fallen again and kill Ahsoka? That sudden question that popped into his head made him falter, and he only just managed to jump away before Vader could strike him. Ahsoka. Even after seeing the worst in him, she didn't want to kill him and even forgave him. So why was he trying to kill himself? Anakin fought within himself, but eventually he was able to let his anger dissipate and stood as calmly as he could as Vader approached. When Vader raised his lightsaber to strike, Anakin swiftly blocked him, then proceeded to grab his wrist, twisting the lightsaber from his hand. He threw both their lightsabers away, then, against his best instinct, he brought Vader into an embrace. He could feel as Vader started to collapse to the ground, Anakin went with him. Before he knew it, the form of Vader vanished, and a voice spoke, one which he hadn't heard since he was a kid. He looked up to see Qui-Gon Jinn standing over him. He praised him for all they had accomplished, though lamented that the destruction of the Jedi Order was a catastrophe. However, it had grown corrupt and complacent, and it was a chance for a new, better order to rise in its place. He continued, saying that what he saw with his children would come true if he didn't succeed in killing Darth Sidious, but he was much closer as he was able to start forgiving himself and finally accept his darker self and all the emotions that it brought. He told him that he was proud of him, and he was always there if he ever truly needed him, but as of now, the time was running out. As he wished Anakin farewell, his form dissolved and Anakin startled awake. He was laying on cold stone with darkness surrounding him, and it took a moment for him to remember that he was in the cave on Dagobah. He got to his feet, and though he was sore all over, he made his way out of the cave. He couldn't tell the time on this planet, but Ahsoka and Yoda were still outside, waiting in silence. Upon seeing Anakin, Ahsoka jumped to her feet and rushed to him. She stopped short, but Anakin closed the distance and wrapped her in a tight hug. He whispered to her, thanking her. This only confused Ahsoka, but before she could ask, Yoda interrupted them, telling Ahsoka to go into the cave. She tried to read Anakin, but could only tell that he was emotionally wrecked. Sighing, she handed Anakin back his lightsaber, as well as hers, before starting her way into the cave. She cast one final look back at Anakin, at the emotional mess he was barely managing to keep in. It scared her, seeing him like this, and she worried what awaited her in the cave, fearing that she wouldn't be strong enough to overcome it. She resolved herself, though, quickly turning and making haste into the cave, not wanting to give herself a chance to cause her doubt to prevent her from doing this. As she entered, she could see light shining from the other side. The cave couldn't be this small. Continuing, she left the cave into a sunny clearing full of lush green grass. In the center of it stood Padme and Anakin with what had to be their children, Luke and Leia. Around the clearing stood Plo Koon with Wolf, Rex, and Cody, then Obi-Wan and Satine. Kanan stood with Dagobah and Master Windu, while Shaak Ti stood with Yoda, Aayla Secura, and Kit Fisto, while the group of younglings she had taken on the gathering were training with Battlemaster Sindralik. How were they all here? She had just left Anakin and Yoda, and the rest of them were most likely killed during Order 66, besides the twins who were in hiding in Rex, Wolf, and Obi-Wan. Before she could think any further, Anakin called her over. She hesitantly went to him, at which point he introduced the twins to her while Padme laughed at their antics. Rex seemed to see her next and greeted her, calling her Commander. Even though she couldn't see it, she knew that Plo Koon was smiling as he greeted her as well, referring to her as little Ahsoka. Everyone else slowly greeted her and included her in their conversations. This felt right, like she was at home, and everything was perfect. Although, however much she hated to admit it, she knew this wasn't real. She had felt Plo Koon die, and knew that most of the rest were killed as well. Ahsoka did want this to be a reality, but it was too late. As if reading her mind, the vision slowly vanished, fading to black, and she felt a part of herself go with it. Morai flew past her and she knew to follow. Ahsoka found herself in a desert-like area with the heat to match. However, oddly enough, there was grass and trees growing atop the sand. Looking up, she sees two suns beaming down on the planet. Morai circled her, urging her forward before starting to lead her again. As Ahsoka crosses a sand dune, she sees what Morai is flying to. There are ruins of a crumbling temple nestled against a rock face. When she finally reaches it, Morai is perched above the entrance. Ahsoka hesitantly enters into the darkness and quickly realizes that the temple isn't built up against rock face, but inside it. It isn't long before the hallway opens into a grand chamber. Light pours in from a hole in the ceiling, and at the far end was an altar with a cloaked figure standing over it. Ahsoka couldn't discern what they were doing, so she approached them. As she got closer, she heard them speaking a language that she didn't understand. Though she couldn't understand it, it wasn't like they were reading something. It was like they were chanting. Ahsoka had close half the distance when the figure suddenly stopped what they were doing and spun around. Ahsoka gasped and staggered back. It was Palpatine. He sneered and raised his hands. He spit the words, "Whoever you are, be gone," as lightning flew from his hands. It hit Ahsoka before she could react, and she was thrown back, the pain making her scream. It was like she was thrown from vision as she stumbled and fell, the impact from her head hitting the stone snapping her back to reality. Her breathing was fast and ragged, and her heart was racing. Once she calmed herself and regained as much of her bearings as she could in the dark cave, she gingerly tested her limbs and felt for injuries. She reached up to where the lightning had hit her, where pain still lingered, and found a hole burn through her shirt, though thankfully her skin felt smooth underneath. She would have to have life returned, but as the pain from the lightning faded, she didn't believe she was actually injured. It scared her though. She didn't know that you could be hurt from a vision, and though she didn't think she was, her shirt was burned, bearing proof of the lightning. Ahsoka dragged herself to her feet, and though she was still wobbly, she could walk, so she hastily made her way out of the cave. She found Anakin and Yoda where she had left them, and when Anakin looks up and sees her, he jumps to his feet and rushes to her, worry etched into his face. He asked what had happened, but Ahsoka just shook her head. She wasn't ready. She told him that they should go back to Yoda, and if they wanted, share what they had seen there with Yoda. Yoda interrupted them, though, saying that their visions were for them and could only be interpreted by them, as he had done with his. Anakin nor Ahsoka argued with him, but one look at the other confirmed that they would share what they saw when they left. They made their way back to Yoda's hut, with Anakin helping Ahsoka until her legs stopped shaking. Once there, with nothing more Yoda could do for them, they thanked him and said their goodbyes. They boarded their ship and took off from the eerie planet, Ahsoka letting Anakin pilot while she changed her shirt. She was going to throw the burned shirt away, but on second thought, it would serve as a good reminder and proof of what had happened, however much it scared her. They quickly jumped away from Dagobah so as not to draw attention to it. When they get to a place where they shouldn't be bothered, Anakin powers off the ship. They sit across from each other, and Anakin tells Ahsoka what he had seen in the cave as well as what Qui-Gon had told him. His vision was straightforward, so they didn't really need to debate what it meant. It was a warning of the future and a way for him to start forgiving himself. Ahsoka took a moment to tell him what she had seen, but the overwhelming silence finally made her speak. The first part wasn't bad, though Anakin felt guilty that it wasn't reality. However, it would be a good memory for Ahsoka. Either way, her second vision was the one that shook her. She was holding the rune shirt in her hands as she told him, using it to work out her nervousness and anxiety. Anakin was perturbed by what she had witnessed, but had no insight. It worried him for Sidious to be doing anything with an altar, especially in an abandoned temple, but didn't recognize neither the planet nor the temple. Though, what worried him most was that he was able to nearly hurt Ahsoka through her vision. Was it a Sith technique, or was Sidious just that powerful? And, if he was, did they even stand a chance against him? He couldn't think like that because if he didn't kill Sidious, then Sidious would get his children. He voiced his worry but also his resolve to Ahsoka, saying that she didn't have to confront Sidious with him if she didn't want to. But Ahsoka reassured him, saying that she had told him that she wouldn't leave him and would help him save the galaxy and his children. They rested and meditated there until they felt ready to return the rebellion. Once they reunited them, they would try to sneak onto Coruscant and confront Sidious. However, upon arriving on Yavin 4, they learned that the rebellion was way ahead of them. In time they were gone, Thrawn had reappeared and made his disallegiance to the Emperor known, which caused a portion of the Imperial forces that were loyal to Thrawn, or were just choosing what side they now believed to be the winning one, to break away from the Imperial military and join the rebellion. This caused small battles to break out all across the galaxy as Imperial fought Imperial, and whole fleets and garrisons suddenly disappearing, sending the Empire into turmoil and confusion. Thrawn was planning with Admiral Ackbar an attack on Coruscant with a force made up of rebels and Imperial defectors. They would wrest control of the galactic capital from the Imperials and reinstate the Senate, hopefully having learned their lesson and ending the war more quickly. Anakin and Ahsoka immediately volunteered to join in, and they tell them of their mission to kill Sidious. However, while the forces gather, Anakin and Ahsoka go to Alderaan after seeing that a message had been waiting for them. When they get there, they indeed find Obi-Wan and Luke staying with the Organas. They had told the twins the truth, and Obi-Wan was teaching them about the Force. Though Bail Organa given the role of Alderaan sent her to Leia, he reassumed the role for the upcoming battle, both because of his experience and connections, but also because he didn't want to put his beloved daughter in danger. Anakin got to greet his children as a father for the first time, but it was awkward at first, though Leia was comfortable around Ahsoka, both from seeing her often, but also from hearing about her from Bail. They didn't have enough time together though, as all too soon, Anakin and Ahsoka were leaving to meet up with Thrawn and Ackbar in the combined fleets. When they reach the staging point, they find that the gathered fleet is indeed impressive, consisting of Imperial-class Star Destroyers that had massive rebel symbols painted on them, as well as Imperial cruisers, Mon Calamari cruisers, along with a swarm of other ships and freighters turned warships. It consisted of hundreds of ships, fighters, and bombers. They landed in Thrawn's command ship, an Imperial Star Destroyer, as had hangar space and reported in. Within hours, they board their new respective X-Wings that had been acquired for them and take off before jumping with the rest of the fleet into hyperspace. As soon as they exited hyperspace, the massive battle commenced as hundreds of ships and fighters clashed. Anakin and Ahsoka were tasked with paving paths through the swarms of TIE fighters and causing confusion amidst the Imperial fleet, which they had great success at. They smashed through the fighters, causing maximum damage before targeting bridges or engines of the Imperial ships with their proton torpedoes, before swinging back around, rearming and starting another run. They kept on doing this until Thrawn contacted them, telling them that the fleet was sufficiently weakened, and it was time for Phase 2. For this, Anakin and Ahsoka met up with Mandalorian Comrade-class fighter transports, and escorted them to the surface. Once there and disembarked, Anakin and Ahsoka jumped out of their X-Wings and had the astromechs go with the Comrades back to the fleet. They were the spirit of the forces that were going to secure at least the top levels of Coruscant. They first fought and secured the Senate building, then the Executive building once the rebel forces came to guard the Senate building. When the rebels relieved them of the Executive building, they then went to the Imperial Palace, the former Jedi Temple. It was the hardest battle yet, but with the Mandalorians backing them, it wasn't too difficult to defeat the Stormtroopers and the Royal Guards. When they finally reached the throne room, Anakin sends the Mandalorian set up a perimeter while he and Ahsoka confront Sidious. No matter how strong he was, he wouldn't be able to survive this force. Once ready, Anakin smashes the doors off the hinges with the force, sending them flying inward. They took out several Imperial guards, but the rest charged them. Anakin and Ahsoka swiftly cut through them, watching each other's backs along the way. Once they are dealt with, they rush towards the throne, to the hooded figure that was sitting on it. However, at the base of the stairs, Anakin holds up his hand and tells Ahsoka to stop. Something is wrong. Sidious wasn't reacting. Anakin delved into the Force and felt the figure, feeling the Force signature, but there wasn't one. Cautiously, Anakin approached the figure and removed the hood. Underneath was a droid, and Anakin swiftly crushed its head with the Force. It had been watching them, recording them. Ahsoka, having precognition of something, quickly reached out with the Force and yanked Anakin away from the throne, just as the whole dais exploded. They both went flying, Anakin managing to catch himself, but Ahsoka still focused on Anakin, landing hard. Anakin rushed to her and helped her up. Thankfully, the worst of her were cuts and bruises, though Ahsoka was dazed from hitting her head. The Mandalorians rushed in, expecting a fight, but instead took in the destruction. Anakin told them what had happened. Anakin gets Ahsoka out of the temple in the smoke before joining the Mandalorians and searching the entire palace. However, after thoroughly combing it, they did not find Sidious. They get in contact with the other rebels to report this and get the good news that as the galactic capital fell, hundreds of worlds have sent word that they were willing to join the alliance to restore the Republic, and their senators are on the way to Coruscant. The war had taken a decisive turn and its conclusion was near. Anakin and Ahsoka left the rest of the battle and cleanups to the other rebels, and instead sought out Thrawn. If anyone could find Sidious, it would be him. He was on board his Imperial Star Destroyer, and had already heard the news that Sidious likely wasn't on Coruscant. They found him hunched over a galactic map, surveying it. They talked with him about where Sidious could have gone, though it was mostly Anakin and Thrawn, as Ahsoka knew little of the Sith or Sidious. However, while they debated, Ahsoka rubbed her sore muscles, and as her new wounds stinged, she remembered her vision in the cave. She quickly interrupted the conversation, reminding Anakin as well. He nodded, saying that it was the best possibility. Thrawn was confused, so Ahsoka briefly explained it. It didn't take long for him to understand what she was going for, and to her surprise, he told her that they would try it. She had suspected he wouldn't trust or even believe in the Force, but he simply said that his people relied on it to find their way. This confused Ahsoka, but Thrawn refused to elaborate any further, so she dropped it. He pulled up a catalog of planets and had her describe the planets she saw. The desert with vegetation, 2 suns, and the ruins from a civilization narrowed it down drastically. Anakin also said that it should have something to do with the Sith, which left only a few planets. However, it would take too long for them to search them all. Thrawn asked Ahsoka if she would be able to feel if it was the right planet just by visiting it, to which she told him that she was unsure, but it was unlikely. Thrawn frowned before scanning over the list of planets again. He pulled up a planet, telling them that he would recommend starting with that one. Sidious had sent people to investigate it, but he didn't know the results. It was the only planet on the list that Thrawn knew had a direct connection to Sidious. This was good enough for Anakin and Ahsoka, and they asked where it was and what it was called. Thrawn looked up, telling them that it was in the outer rim of the Loris Baba system. The planet's name was Athos. Anakin and Ahsoka left informing the rest of the rebellion of what they were doing to Thrawn and quickly went to their shuttle, which was still on board Thrawn's Star Destroyer. They take off and plug Athos coordinates into the computer and quickly jump into hyperspace. However, before they get too far, a message from Bell detours them to Alderaan. When they land in the palace, Obi-Wan was waiting for them on the landing pad. He was going to join them in their fight against Sidious, and Anakin and Ahsoka were thankful for it. With him on board, they took off again and resumed their journey to Athos, without any further interruption. They arrive over the planet, and from the atmosphere at least, it is eerily familiar to Tatooine for Anakin with the 2 suns and sand on the surface. Though he is thankful when they enter atmosphere and the vegetation can be seen scattered everywhere. While Anakin pilots, Obi-Wan and Ahsoka delve into the Force and search for the dark presence. Ahsoka also looks at the landscape to see if she recognizes anything. At the first sight of ruins, she becomes near certain that this was the right place, as the architecture resembled the temple she had seen in her vision. However, after a few hours of searching and no results, Obi-Wan and Anakin began to doubt. When Anakin was about ready to give up and leave, Ahsoka kicked him out of the pilot seat and took over. She was about to delve into the Force again and let it guide her, when she remembered that it was Morai that had guided her before. She whispered out loud, asking Morai to guide her again. Anakin and Obi-Wan looked at her weird, but before they could say anything, Morai flew in front of the ship and then suddenly banked to the right. Ahsoka turned the ship hard to follow, tossing Anakin and Obi-Wan, causing them to let out surprised yelps. They stayed silent though as Ahsoka followed Morai, but it wasn't long before Anakin stiffened and closed his eyes. He said that he could feel someone, and he believed that it was Sidious. Ahsoka smiled softly, being thankful that she had once again believed in Morai. Morai flew up and out of sight just as Ahsoka saw the ruins of a temple she had seen in her vision. She flew behind the sand dunes that she had crested in her vision and landed near a corpse of trees that were nestled against a cliff. By now, all of them could feel the dark side of the Force presence. It was like they weren't even trying to hide it, though if they were paying any attention, they would also know that they had guests. Chewie disembarked the ship, and Ahsoka unconsciously took the lead to the crumbling temple, having already walked this path before. As she entered the temple a second time, she noticed that there were many more rooms and hallways than she had first noticed, a labyrinth of corridors, and she realized that she had not walked straight down the main corridor as there wasn't one. However, she still somehow knew the way and confidently led Obi-Wan and Anakin to the chamber that she had seen. When they got there, it was like her vision again, the light pouring in from the ceiling with a hooded figure hunched over an altar. This time though, Sidious immediately turned around upon their entry into the grand chamber. He wore a wicked smile, though his displeasure was clear. He told them that he hoped that this place would remain a secret, but that was ruined by who he now knew to be Ahsoka due to her Force presence. Either way, she would pay for it, and Anakin would pay for betraying him. Without waiting another moment, Sidious ignited 2 lightsabers and leapt towards them. They all ignited their lightsabers, and Anakin went forward to directly confront Sidious. Owen jumped in a moment later as Anakin was driven back, putting his Form 3 to use, blocking Sidious. Ahsoka stayed on the side, watching and waiting for openings. She knew she was no match for Sidious, especially in a prolonged duel. When she saw an opening, she struck, but was always forced to quickly retreat again as Sidious shifted his focus to her. It still at least gave Anakin Obi-Wan a moment. They were steadily wearing Sidious down, and it was obvious he knew it, as he kept trying to target a single opponent. He used his Sith tricks whenever he could, whether it be Sith lightning or a Sith howl, but they had little effect as he had to quickly stop or risk getting gutted. Anakin found it odd that Sidious was acting like this. It was not like him to personally fight his opponent. Rather, he would have someone else and only fight if he had to, like if he was buying time. Anakin jerked his head to the altar and caught a glimpse of something, but had to refocus on the duel as Sidious swung at him. He yelled to Ahsoka to chuck the altar, and she immediately rushed toward it. However, before she reached it, Sidious let out a screech and launched himself across the room towards her and the altar. Anakin and Obi-Wan rushed after him, desperate to get to Ahsoka as he landed in front of her. Ahsoka raised her lightsabers and engaged him, but wasn't messing around anymore, shooting lightning with his left while he swung his lightsaber with his right. She was knocked off balance as he pushed her back, and before she knew it, she lost her main lightsaber. Sidious didn't even hesitate as he swung again, and she felt his lightsaber cut through her, the pain making her cry out and collapse, faintly aware of her right arm falling further away with her leku, too far away. Anakin and Obi-Wan reached her only in time to prevent Sidious from finishing her, and while Obi-Wan protected her, Anakin drove him back, his anger and the fear of losing Ahsoka powering him on. He quickly drove him back and was close to finally killing him, before the altar suddenly exploded, throwing them all back. As Anakin looked up and squinted through the dust and what had to be smoke, an ethereal figure floated above the ruined altar. The figure had crimson skin with tentacle-like things dangling from its cheeks and glowing yellow eyes. His gaze drifted across the room before landing on Sidious. In a gravelly but deep voice, he asked Sidious why he had summoned and disturbed him. Sidious cackled, saying violence but power. The figure asked if he knew who he was, and Sidious immediately answered, saying that of course he knew, that he was Vodo Kresh, the greatest alchemist of the Sith Empire. Kresh simply chuckled and asked if he truly believed that he was strong enough to control him, a true Sith. He must be arrogant or foolish, but either way, he was thankful for his body. Without hesitating, Kresh flew through the air towards Sidious. For the first time in his life, Anakin saw true fear on Sidious' face, as he first shot lightning, then just blindly lashed out with the Force. Neither made Kresh flinch or even harm his ethereal figure, and his misty form disappeared into the body of Sidious. Sidious hunched over and screamed as the two souls fought for control of the body. Anakin scrambled to his feet and found where his lightsaber had landed. He ignited it and approached the thrashing body of Sidious, not wanting to let this opportunity be wasted. But before he could get within striking distance, Sidious stilled. When he straightened, Anakin knew that Sidious had lost, as the face was contorted into a sneer with eyes that didn't seem to match the body. Anakin crouched and then launched forward. Kresh raised his lightsaber in time but stumbled back upon the impact. Anakin didn't want to give a moment and relentlessly pushed him, not wanting to allow him to get used to the body. When his back hit the wall, Anakin swiftly cut off both of his hands before running him through. Before his eyes, the body of Sidious crumbled as Kresh's ethereal form fled and Sidious regained his body. Not waiting another moment, Anakin swiftly cut his head off, and before his eyes, Sidious's body turned to dust. Crest shot back away from Anakin before looking around again. This time, his gaze down on where Obi-Wan was tending to Ahsoka. Anakin saw where he was looking and immediately reached out and grabbed Crest with the Force, yanking him toward him. He told him that he was thankful for helping kill Sidious, but not thankful enough to let a true Sith be free. He started crushing the figure of Crest with the Force, and he shrieked, though Anakin didn't stop till his ethereal form was gone. He only realized after how much injury it took as he collapsed to his knees, exhausted. He couldn't rest now, though. Ahsoka was hurt. He staggered to his feet and rushed over to where she and Obi-Wan were, but stopped short of the sight and his heart lurched. Her right arm and leg were gone, nowhere to be seen. Obi-Wan got him moving again, though, telling him that they needed to get her to the medical facility fast, otherwise risk losing her. He told Anakin to carry back to the ship, power it up and see if there was a medical droid while he tried to find her arm and leg, so that they could hopefully reattach him. Anakin numbly but promptly obeyed, going to her uninjured side and gently scooping Ahsoka into his arms. She was partially conscious and groaned as he realized that the lightsaber had also grazed her side as well. As he left the temple, he did his best not to put pressure on that side as he hurried to the ship over the soft sand. When he got to and powered up, his fears were realized when he found no medical droid. He'd never seen one on all the time traveling on it. Didn't even really have any rooms. It was fast, but it was because it was small. Anakin did, however, find some medical supplies, including backpacks, which he quickly retrieved and rushed back to where he had laid Ahsoka in the center of the ship. It was a small open area that was just up the ramp. A better space working her than the cramped bunk that was crammed into the wall of the ship. It felt like forever before Obi-Wan returned. But when he saw him, he simply shook his head. He couldn't find her arm and leg. The explosion had blown them away and ruined the temple, making finding them a near impossibility. Aang tried not to dwell on what it might mean, and quickly took the control of the ship, taking off and exiting the atmosphere of the Forsaken planet, jumping to hyperspace once the hyperdrive was ready. It was almost instinct on where to go. Alderaan had become like safe haven for him, and he hoped that they would make it in time for Ahsoka. The time to hyperspace dragged by painfully slow for them, as Ahsoka came in out of consciousness. Immediately when they exited hyperspace above Alderaan, though, Anakin sent a communication to the palace, letting them know that they were coming in the situation. When they landed in the palace, there were people waiting for them. As soon as Anakin lowered the ramp, they ran onto the ship, gently transferred Ahsoka to a stretcher, and rushed her inside. Obi-Wan and Anakin numbly followed at a distance, just beginning to allow themselves to process what had happened. Leia met them in the medical wing, and she just caught a glimpse of Ahsoka before they could shut the door to work on her. She asked what had happened, and Obi-Wan told her the important bits, most importantly how Palpatine was now dead. She turned to the person that followed her and told them to inform Bell of the situation, to which they nodded and excused themselves. They all waited for news of Ahsoka and were soon joined by Luke, who had been out in the city. It wasn't long after that someone came out. They told them that they believed that she would be fine, though they couldn't guarantee since they were not experts on Togruta physiology. Either way, they were repairing a prosthetic arm for her. Ahsoka didn't wake up for a couple of days, but when she did, they were relieved. Bell was back on Alderaan by then and explained to all of them that with the death of Sidious, most of the Imperials had surrendered, though there were a portion of Imperial remnants that made fiefdoms that were spread across the galaxy. The main worrying thing was that they found that Sidious had made an order in case he was killed that basically told any remaining Imperials to destroy as many worlds as possible. Most weren't following it, but there were a few that were, the primary person being Gallius Rax. Bell had come back to ask for assistance in stopping Operation Cinder from Anakin and Obi-Wan. They hesitantly agreed to help after Ahsoka reassured them she would be fine without them there. They soon left with Bell, leaving Ahsoka to recover with the encouragement from Luke and Leia. Anakin and Obi-Wan immediately jumped into the fight, stopping the Imperials from destroying several worlds with help from the Mandalorians, who are still more than eager to both exact revenge for what they had attempted to do to their homeworld and people, and want others to be spared that same fate as well. The Mandalorians had become more militarized with more and more daunting armor and joined the fight, and though the New Republic was wary, they were still glad that they were getting help. Operation Cinder was a mixed blessing for the New Republic, as it allowed them to find and fight the most die-hard Imperials while the rest surrendered due to the horror of what they were attempting to do. Thankfully though, Anakin and Obi-Wan finally catch up to Gallius Rax and defeat his fleet over Vardos, thus ending Operation Cinder. But thanks to R2-D2 scanning the Imperial databanks, they learned that the operation was just a distraction for the rest of the loyal Imperials to flee into the unknown regions. Though there were no coordinates, they managed to find some Imperials that were preparing to flee and sneak aboard one of the cruisers. They informed Bell of their findings and suspicions that the Imperials are gathering, and he promised to gather the rebel fleet to be ready to strike when they got the corners of the staging ground. Anakin and Obi-Wan commandeered the ship while it was in hyperspace. Once they exit, they find a planet below them with dozens of star destroyers and countless other ships in orbit. Looking at the star charts, the planet was named Exegol. Anakin wants to immediately inform the Republic, but Obi-Wan stops him, telling him that they are likely monitoring the ships for such cases, and probably jamming signals. So instead they would take the shuttle docked in the cruiser and fight at the surface. Immediately upon entering the atmosphere, coordinates and landing pad number were broadcast to them, thankfully giving them the location of the facility on the planet. They debate what to do, but Anakin, who was getting more and more impatient through the months of fighting, finally won out. They would simply land and fight their way to the communication center, send out the coordinates for the planet in hopes that the rebel fleet had gathered, then get back to the shuttle. And most of them proceeded to plan as though the Imperials were looking for spies. They weren't expecting 2 Jedi. And though stormtroopers were good, they were no match for them. Anakin was especially temperamental, blasting his way through with the utmost force. They half expected the Imperials to bomb the base, shut down the signal, so as soon as they sent it out, they ran as fast as they could to get back to the landing pads. However, upon reaching them, they instead found that they were sending down shuttles. Anakin wondered that perhaps there was something here that they needed to protect, but didn't focus on it as they powered up the shuttle and took off. He stayed in the atmosphere and managed to use the TIE fighters that were sent after them before finding a place to land to await the rebel fleet. They didn't have to wait long, as soon, even from the surface, they could see a massive battle commence in orbit. Anakin was tempted to stay and watch, but Obi-Wan got him to take off as debris started to come raining down. As they were about to make it into orbit, Obi-Wan saw a star destroyer that had gone pulling the atmosphere crash into the Imperial base, causing a terrific explosion. Anakin grumbled now they wouldn't be able to find what they wanted to protect, but Obi-Wan pointed out that with his recent attitude, he wouldn't have stayed to investigate anyway. Ignoring his comment, Anakin flies into space and is about to send a message to the new Republic Admiral in charge when he sees the Republic ships in their formation. Republic Star Destroyers in a classic Thrawn formation. It was easy to pick out his capital ship among it, and they skirted around the edge of the battle to it, informing them who they were in advance. Once they in the hangar, they joined Thrawn on the bridge and watched the battle turn into a complete victory for the Republic. As soon as that happened, Thrawn, likely having read Anakin's restlessness, quickly sent them off back to the known galaxy. He had brought the shuttle they had gone as a gift to Ahsoka and Anakin from where they had left it to infiltrate the fleet, so they gladly took it, leaving Thrawn to finish the Empire. Anakin and Obi-Wan arrived back on Alderaan to find Ahsoka training Luke and Leia in both aspects of the Force and in lightsaber forms. The doctors had attached her prosthetic arm, but it had been hard for Ahsoka to come to terms with losing her arm in Lekku. But as the prosthetic arm was attached, she couldn't help but laugh as she realized that she was now, like Zelda, but on the opposite side. Put them together and you would get a full Togruta. The thought made her wonder how he was doing and where he had ended up. Once Doctor deemed it safe to fully become accustomed to her new arm, Ahsoka began practicing lightsaber forms. Luke and Leia had seen her one day and she offered to teach them, which they excitedly accepted. She found that the new arm felt like the old one once she had tweaked it to her liking, albeit tough and she'd go on like nothing had happened. Her Lekku, however, did constantly throw her off and make her uneasy whenever the once familiar presence wasn't there resting on her shoulder. In time, she had been able to find where Zelda ended up. He and most of the refugees had settled on Alderaan, so she was able to meet and catch up. He gave her tips and advice to help her become more accustomed to her new way of life. With Anakin's and Obi-Wan's return, everyone caught up and Anakin started to try to act like a father to Luke and Leia. They periodically joined the new Republic forces to eliminate the few Imperial holes that were left. When they were quickly dealt with, the galaxy finally found some peace. The Senate was fully re-established and reforms were happening, though many worlds were refusing to join the Republic, instead opting to remain independent. Mandalore and Ryloth were the forefront of these planets, with the Mandalorians acting as protectors for those planets. They embraced a glory of combat by fighting pirates, slavers, and criminal empires as a whole. Mon Moth was focused on bringing peace as fast as possible and at all costs, and thankfully her efforts were paying off as few people wanted more war. Yoda stayed in exile, but Obi-Wan decided to start a new Jedi Order, though this was entirely composed of volunteers, and focused on just training Force sensitives how to handle and not abuse the Force. Anakin and Ahsoka sometimes helped him, but mostly focused on helping keep the galaxy at peace and teaching Luke and Leia. Leia decided to stay with the Organas on Alderaan since they felt like her family, though she and Luke still did accept Anakin. The Organas had also adopted Luke per his wish, which they are more than willing to do so he could be with his sister. With the Sith and dogmatic Jedi gone, and peace on everyone's mind, the galaxy entered another golden age. This was not just felt in the core, but all throughout the galaxy.